on the agenda, right? Okay. Got that right. Before I forget, let me, I know there's an interest in the following, the adult portion of criminal justice reform, I guess adult criminal justice reform part 2, as a follow-up from House Bill 1176 last year, will be introduced. It'll be tomorrow, read and referred, and then we'll have the first hearing on that. It'll be hearing only Friday morning at 9:30. We'll send out a notice tomorrow morning. We can't do that until we have a bill number, so we'll know that tomorrow. We'll send out the notice, but for anyone who may be interested, I just thought I'd mention that today. And we have a quorum. Let me go ahead and call House Bill 122, Representative Tanner. And we'll make sure. Let's make sure that's on. Is that one on?
Yes, sir.
It is on. If you could go ahead and give us an overview of the bill, and then I'll ask the subcommittee chair on the bill to give any report that he may have, and then we'll go to questions from members of the committee, if any. So, Representative Tanner, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee, and I'll actually be referring to the House or the committee substitute LC 295438S. In essence, this bill in Georgia, the Sex Offender Review Board is tasked under Georgia law with reviewing and classifying all sex offenders that are convicted in Georgia into 3 levels of classification. Level 1, 2 are sexual predator. In doing that, they review various types of information to try to gather as much detail and as much information as they can in order to properly classify the individuals. In an audit that was done September 2012 by the Georgia Department of Audits and Accounts, and I believe this has been referenced in previous audits also, one of their findings that were hindering the SOR, or the Sex Offender Review Board, from doing their job was the fact that they did not have access to Pro Board files. Under Georgia law, the Pro Board files are only accessible to the Pro Board and to the Department of Correction State Probation. That change was made in the law a few years ago. They are considered state secrets and are not subject to open records, and no other state agency has access to these. As a result of that, it's hampering the ability of the Sex Offender Review Board to do a proper job. So the bill that you have before you basically just allows the Sex Offender Review Board to review these files. They will remain state secrets. They are not subject to the Open Records Act, but they can utilize those in doing their due diligence in properly classifying sex offenders. We met with Michael Nell, the Executive Director of Parole, with Tracy of the Executive Director of the Sex Offender Review Board, who's here, and also with the Attorney General's office in drafting this language. They're all very comfortable with it. They all support it. Also, I know Mr. Bankhead is here from the GBI, but the director of the GBI is in support of this change, and so is the Sheriff's Association, and they feel like this would make the process much smoother and give all the information that's necessary for them to do a proper job. So I do have Tracy here, and at this time, Mr. Chairman, if you would allow her to come up, I would like for her to be able to give a little bit of background of her agency and what they do.
That'd be fine. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We determine the risk of sexual...
Could you just let us know who you are and what your role is? And we have new members here, so they might not have the background.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm Tracy Alford. I'm the Executive Director of the Sex Offender Registration Review Board. And the board was developed in 2006. And part of that we have 3 evaluators who have extensive knowledge in the background of sex offenders and their behavior. And their job is to determine the risk of sex offenders. And they do that based on actuarials that have been researched extensively. There's 2 components of those actuarials. One are static factors, and those are things that do not change unless the sex offender reoffends sexually. Those things include the relationship to the victim, how many victims, the age of the victim. We also look at dynamic risk factors, and those are things that do change. And we identify that through probation information, so their supervision on probation, while they're on parole, or while they're in the prison system. Where that comes in particularly useful is when, with HB 571, is determined that an offender levels as a 1, then they can be considered removal from the registry. Well, many of those that are petitioning for that have not been supervised for years. And so what we do is we get the information about when they were under supervision, how did they do? And I do have an example that I think is a really good example. With this report, this is a report where we were able to get information from probation because we do have access to their information. What you'll see is what I've highlighted in yellow is all the information we received from probation. What is highlighted in yellow we would not have received from parole because we do not have access to their information at this time. This particular offender is he is office supervision. He's trying to get off the registry. He petitioned for an evaluation. With the information, if we had not had the information in yellow, he likely would have been leveled a 1. However, the information in yellow, which represents information from probation, that says he has at least 40 victims that he was never caught for, and we subsequently made him a predator. Now, with parole, we have no information similar to this. So if this had been a parole case, he would have been a level 1. And so this is where we have worked really hard and have gained a lot of support in being able to obtain information from parole that we can't obtain at this point.
This sounds like a real game changer in terms of your ability to do your job and to make it an accurate determination.
Absolutely. It's going to be very, very helpful. And we'll feel it's been difficult because we've been fearing that we are leveling people not accurately because we're lacking this information.
Questions from members of the committee of either the author or Ms. Alvord? Ms. Randall.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just interested on the account 1799 and 5 and 8, 599 and 202. The probation violations. Why is it not descriptive like the one on 11598?
Oh, the date. Are you saying the dates?
The violation itself.
Why is it not descriptive?
Mm-hmm.
If you go through the report,
Mm-hmm.
on the second page, you'll find the details of those
Oh,
violations.
okay. Okay. All right, that was my question. Thank you.
It's not unusual where an offender may commit a new sex crime while they're under supervision, and rather than prosecute him for that crime, they'll violate their probation, they'll serve time, so rather than going through the court process. So for example, in this case, he was caught viewing child pornography. He was not prosecuted. It was deemed a violation of probation instead of that. So again, we would never have known he committed a new sex crime had we not had access to that probation information.
Any further questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, Ms. Tanner, you have a background in public safety. Would you tell members of the committee just to make sure they're familiar with that, where you come from on that?
Yes, sir. I was in law enforcement for 18 years. 11 of those years I ran a law enforcement agency, and then I've served as a member of the Board of Corrections appointed by Governor Perdue to that board, where I served on the state board. And that's actually how I got to know Michael Nell. He worked for us at the Department of Corrections. He now is Executive Director of Parole, doing an outstanding job. Also, Katie Strayhorn's here with us today in the audience. Katie is the chairman of the Sex Offender Review Board, appointed to that board by Governor Dill and just reelected to her second term as chairman, and does an outstanding job. So very familiar with this area of the law, and I feel it's very important that they have all the information that's necessary to be able to properly do their job.
Thank you for bringing the bill. Perfect example of a citizen legislator bringing, their personal background and having an impact. Perfect example. Mr. Ramsey.
Are we in a posture for a motion, Mr. Chairman?
We are.
I move. First, thank you to the member for bringing this bill forward. This is an excellent piece of legislation, and I'm pleased to make the motion do pass on the committee substitute to House Bill 122 LC 295438S.
Mr. Ramsey moves do pass HB 122 by substitute LC 295438S. Second by Vice Chairman Pack. Are there any amendments? Seeing none. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor of the gentleman's motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Thank you, Ms. Tanner.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you, Ms. Alford. HB 187. Ms. Dickerson. You can do it from there, Ms. Dickerson. It's fine. It's all right. As a member of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring forth this bill, House Bill 187. I represent the city of Porterdale in Newton County, and they're just asking that this general law be extended to July 1st, 2013. They would like to become a drug-free zone. And right now, there are 4 of the cities that have been awarded this drug-free zone: the city of Eatonton, Atlanta, Social Circle, and College Park as of 2012. Are there any questions?
Mr. Ramsey.
Could you just explain to me what it means to be a drug-free commercial zone?
Okay. A drug-free commercial zone is one that the General Assembly has already passed this. It's already general law, and they're just asking that it be legal to possess, manufacture, sell, consume, or distribute any drugs within 1,000 feet of any real property owned by or leased by any public or private elementary school, secondary, or any school board used for elementary, secondary education. And this 1,000-foot radius is a drug-free zone.
Okay. But isn't everywhere, I mean, I support it, but isn't it illegal to do that everywhere?
Is it illegal, you said?
You said to possess with intent to distribute marijuana and other controlled substances. I'm just curious what enhanced treatment or what happens within a drug-free commercial zone versus areas that aren't a drug-free commercial
Well,
zone.
it constitutes a felony if someone is doing this, and it's already on the books. It's already a
I know.
Georgia law.
I've just never heard of this before. So.
I would ask a question about what's the significance of being registered in the DCA. Does that provide some sort of grant application ability for a locality to access? I mean, obviously we noticed the fact that it's whatever it is expired from March 28, 2011. So,
Well, the city of College Park had an application that was given to them in 2012, and I guess the law on the books had it up until 2011, and we're just asking that the date be extended to July 1st, 2013, so that the city of Porterdale will be a part of the law as it is now.
okay, so it sounds as if a municipality, right, wanted to be part of this program, for lack of a better term, and an interface with DCA, that it had to have been designated by DCA, I guess, entered on their registry by March 28th of 2011. We're trying to move that date up to allow localities that have not registered, entered in the register, or been adopted and entered in the register of DCA to go ahead and do so, I think.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
And I'm just trying to figure out what that program is. I've
Yeah.
never heard of it.
Is there a member of is there a
life.
representative of DCA who might be here?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
It's just a register right now that we keep for those municipalities that register. This is nothing tied to it. If there is, I'll keep back with you. It's my knowledge there's not.
What's the benefit of registering? I mean, is there any resources brought to bear, or
Or taken away or granted? No, that's my knowledge.
Why did it sunset? Do you know why we had a March 28, 2011 date before?
Nope.
I mean, isn't it our goal for the whole state to be a drug-free zone?
I would say yes.
So this really doesn't do much of anything.
Other than change the date to extend it.
I mean, the drug-free commercial zone program.
No, I just think it was an incentive or something that perhaps they wanted to encourage people to do or to
Okay.
program.
Okay. Ms. Randall.
If I'm not mistaken, we looked at this in my city, and I think it puts you in a position to apply for certain grants, federal grants, if you and to help you with your drug outreach in communities. I think if you're designated a drug-free zone, then you can apply for that federal funding.
I will look into that and get back.
Yeah.
Mr. Pack.
Also, I think the statute gives an enhanced penalty, including consecutive sentences, for dealing in that zone. The feds have a similar program.
Right.
One more question.
Mr. Ramsey.
If that's the case, then should we pass a law that says the entire state of Georgia is a commercial drug-free zone? No? Okay. All right.
Let's.
I can make a motion.
We learn something new every day, and I think we just did. Majority whip waves. Is there a motion?
I move do pass on House Bill 187, LC 21, 1905.
Mr. Ramsey moves do pass HB 187 LC 21 1905, second by Ms. Randall. Are there any amendments? Mr. Lindsay.
And to the author, I like the idea, and I now understand that. Is there any reason why we should cut things off as of July 1st, 2013? In other words, if other cities after this date wanted to do it?
In 12, right? Aren't they reapplying?
It's a renewal every 5 years.
Okay.
But this is the way Legislative Council drafted the bill, sir. I don't know why they gave 2013.
Well, I was going to, the proposed motion, I tell you what, I'm going to withdraw it. At some point, I would love from DCA to sort of tell us, perhaps before it gets to the floor, would it be better to simply take out on or before July 1st, 2013, just so that the program can continue after that date? But if perhaps you could get it to that. I'm not going to propose a motion now to the representative's bill.
We could always have that in the form of an amendment under a modified open rule.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second. See no amendments. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the gentleman's motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. We'll straighten that out one way or the other. We call on Representative Lindsay for House Bill 141. I think we put the heater on over there, so why don't you go over there, Mr. Whip? Thank you. As a part-time member of the committee.
I come whenever I'm called.
Yes, you do, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This committee has been extremely proactive over the last 3 years in taking aggressive steps against the horrible crime of human trafficking. This bill is yet another attempt on our part to continue in that fight. I would like, because this committee has worked so hard, like to, if I may, first sort of tell you what your progress has achieved over the last 3 years. Prior to 2011 and the passage of HB 200 by this committee, Georgia ranked as having one of the weakest laws in the country in combating human trafficking. According to a study that came out last fall, we are now viewed as one of the 6 or 7 states that have the strongest laws in the country when it comes to human trafficking. And I want to first start off by commending this committee for its hard work in that area. HB 141 is a simple bill. What it does is it lays out the type of establishments where human trafficking is most likely to be occurring, what type of commercial establishments is most likely to be occurring in. Now, many of these establishments, all of these establishments are operating legally, but sometimes they have people who prey upon these sort of establishments in their own nefarious human trafficking operations. What the bill will do is require these establishments to post a notice that simply notifies a victim of human trafficking who sees that notice that there's help out there, and there's help on the other end of a 1-800 line. This has proven to be a very good program, and I'll have some people testify as to its effectiveness in other states. But we've passed this in other states, and it's proven to be a very effective program in terms of getting word to the victim exactly what's out there to help them. We passed some good laws, and we set up some great programs in terms of trying to help a lot of these victims, but most of them don't know it's out there. And that's sort of the nature of human trafficking. Is a lot of times the perpetrators cut folks off from the outside world, but this sort of helps tell them there's help out there at the other end of a 1-800 number. It sort of lays out the different type of establishments where the sign must be posted. That's found on pages
2 and 3 of the bill. I think, and I believe someone from here from the massage therapist, licensed massage therapist folks, who are understandably concerned about having their profession lumped in with those other professions that they purport to offer massages without a license. And so we have made it very clear that we're talking about businesses and establishments that offer massage and body work services, but do not have a licensed therapist on site delivering those services. So we try to distinguish out the legitimate operations from those operations that may not be quite above board. The bill sort of lays out that the GBI will be sort of setting up the nature of the sign that has to be posted. On page 4 of the bill sort of lays out the penalties, and I know there were some concerns as to some of the penalties that were put forth. I want to make it clear that what we were doing by putting this in the law was actually limiting the punishments, and not because right now a misdemeanor is up to a year in prison, this for not posting a sign will be a misdemeanor. We limited it down to 30 days. I know some people have some concerns about the imprisonment part. I'm happy to sort of, if you do have concerns about that, I'm more than happy to take that out. That's not the guts of the bill. I've also had some questions about, well, how is this going to be enforced? Law enforcement has informed us that they will use this law, quite frankly, to go into certain establishments where they suspect human trafficking is taking place and make sure that the signs are up there. So they can use that as a tool to help combat human trafficking in areas where they suspect it's already taking place. Also, quite frankly, I have a very good army, or rather we in the state have a very good army of volunteers around the state who are already working voluntarily with various businesses to try to get them to voluntarily post the signs. And this will help give them an additional leverage when it comes to talking to the various operations around the state to have these signs posted. They've already, I want to emphasize that a good many very legitimate businesses out there are worried about their business being used as a hot spot for this kind of activity, and a lot of them have already voluntarily put this up. This simply will help that overall program that's already taken place. I've been informed, and I see my friends from the DA's office are here. I was informed by Chuck Spahos that the district attorneys, Solicitor Generals were in support of the bill. I want to make sure, David, am I correct with that? As well as the Georgia Bureau of Investigation has worked with me in terms of the language, and I want to thank them as well. That's essentially it from my standpoint. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Just I don't know if this is a question or a statement. This is fair, and I appreciate your flexibility on the penalty provision, and I think we'll take a harder look at that.
Yeah.
It's an important bill, and I think we need to move this bill. I'm just a little concerned about the penalty provision. I'm a little concerned about the breadth of it and the number of places. Certainly the adult entertainment establishments, bars. If you look in that's a very exhaustive list, and especially when you get into all hotels. If it's a bar, I don't know if we're talking about a bar that's just a bar, or a bar, well, I guess under the definition, serving food is only incidental. But you've got some in that list, page 3, that are a lot of different locations. I'm a little concerned about, I sort of want to have my cake and eat it too. I want to be able to go ahead, and I like the idea of, if you don't post the sign, law enforcement can go and take, make its way in there to go ahead and check enforcement on that, and lo and behold, if they discover sexual trafficking, human trafficking, good. I'm a little concerned about the good players, the good actors, and some of the burden that might.
Well, I will say this:
I
think a lot of the good actors are actually supportive of these efforts, and the good actors have generally been the ones who've been most willing to post it voluntarily.
Sure.
And this is a list that we've worked and developed over the last few years with other states, and that's where we're getting it. Georgia's not the first one to be working on this sort of thing. I will also say that, with the exception of the licensed massage therapist, I've had no one from any of our friends from the various industries indicated the objections. And I thought that the concerns raised by the licensed massage therapist was very legitimate, and that's why we tweaked the language.
Okay. Mr. Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing this bill, Mr. Majority Webb. Two questions. I know that the bill requires posting of signs, and I'm looking at line 79, subsection 9, that says farm labor contractors and day haulers. And looking at the definition that you provided in 30.
I'll tell you what, I'm actually, we offered a committee substitute at 5485, so the line numbers may be slightly different.
Actually, I have that. Yeah.
Yeah,
5485S, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So line 70 has farm labor contractors and day haulers. And I wasn't sure what that was, and I looked at the definitions. 33 to line 43 has the definitions in there, but I'm quite unsure if they have an establishment where you can actually post a sign. So I'm wondering how that would work.
Well,
that group.
It's going to require that in any place that they have an establishment is going to have to post the sign. Any place where they gather up the workers is going to be there to post the sign.
Like if it's a day farmer at Home Depot parking lot, and we have a lot of workers, they should post it on their truck.
There are always going to be limitations to what we can do. We can only do what we can do, and this simply applies to if they have a place of business.
If I may follow up, one other question's about the hotel. I'm wondering, and I know the intent of the bill, and I think it's good, but I'm wondering if an upscale hotel like Ritz-Carlton would love to have their sign conspicuous as you check in, having been a victim of human trafficking.
I'll simply say that no one's objected to it yet, and I would think that a lot of hotels in the city of Atlanta, even the upstanding ones, or the upscale ones, have recognized the seriousness of the problems within the city of Atlanta and would like to be part of the solution.
Can I ask one last question? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, not at all. While we're here.
The enforcement part, line 95, it says any person in an establishment. I kind of question how you identify who's the one that's responsible for putting up the sign.
Person is the term that we've used. If there's a way that you can think of to tighten it, like any owner, perhaps.
Owner or operator,
Owner
perhaps?
or operator might be a better way to phrase that, and I think that would be a better way to phrase it.
Let me see if I could find some amendment language.
Mr. Pack, he expanded on the point that I really didn't expand on earlier on every public restroom. Well, in some hotels, I don't know if that's considered a public restroom, it's private property, but is it a public restroom? I mean, you could, depending on the meeting levels of every hotel, or, I mean, I'm just trying to get into where would this actually physically be required amongst these different venues. And again, we all know what the intent is here. It's just a matter of making sure that we don't, just take a measured approach on it that has it effective, but not.
Well, I think public restroom implies a place where the general public can go to, as opposed to the bathroom in which someone rents the room. I wouldn't consider that.
No, not within a private room in a hotel, but I mean we're talking in the lobby area and the meeting levels and the convention area, and that's where I'm trying to.
I would think that those
narrow
would be
it
considered
down.
public.
Yeah. Mr. Sessler. Let me also welcome the Speaker Pro Tem. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the Majority Whip. Long list here of facilities. The question arises to me, is there a reason we're not posting these everywhere in terms of retail establishments, big box stores and things? I mean, that just came to mind. Is there a reason we're choosing these as distinct from every public facility?
Yeah, these are the places that you're most likely to find human trafficking taking place.
So it really is sort of tailored to that specific population, as opposed to being, if someone's involved in this as a victim of this, we're not trying to catch them anywhere they could be. We're trying to catch them because we think
they're most likely to be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I may have some further questions, but I'm just trying to unpack the specifics of that. Thank you.
Any further questions for the author?
And there are a lot of folks who are going to come and testify who will also be able to help with some of the very legitimate questions that have been raised here.
Okay.
And I appreciate the committee's consideration. And I'll be here for further.
Mr. Pack.
One comment for the author. In terms, if we're going to criminalize the failing of posting, but we also include public restrooms and interstates, Mr. Witt, we may have to have an exclusion for governmental entities for the criminal prosecution. Otherwise, we want to post it certainly, but the criminal statute wouldn't apply to a government entity. Am I wrong about that?
I understand. We could simply any private owner or operator. Would that take care of you, sir?
Mr. Strickland.
I just have one question.
Sure.
Line 98 talks about the notice being mailed, and it starts at 30 days from the date the notice of the violation is actually mailed to the individual. Is there any provision anywhere it talks about what address is to be used? I could just see someone using an offense. I never received it. Especially if it's not a big business, how do you actually mail that to them? I didn't know if it's anywhere that it says that how that is to be mailed.
I think that's a good point, and while the other folks are testifying, perhaps you and I could work out some language in terms of making sure it's mailed to the location where the violation took place, and I'll have to sort of tweak that language.
All right, thank you.
I see no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. I'll call on Jane Johnson, Georgia Board of Massage Therapy.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Jane Johnson. I am the chair of the Georgia Board of Massage Therapy for 7 years now. Back in '05, our law passed, and I still am a member of the American Massage Therapy Association, and I was one of the forerunners that helped get the law passed. And what I wanted to do is I wanted the committee to entertain the idea. I know that no profession is exempt from having human trafficking, that it can infiltrate any profession. One of the I'm not sure if I have the updated version of the bill, but on line 56, where it speaks about businesses and establishments that offer massage or bodywork services by massage therapists, per our statute, you have to be a licensed massage therapist by the board in order to be called a massage therapist.
Well, let me give you a copy of the substitute that we're looking at.
Okay, sure. That'll
Mine's all marked
definitely throw you off.
Thank
you.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Line 74. Okay. Yes, that is very helpful, and it states businesses and establishments that offer massage or bodywork services by a person who is not a massage therapist. That actually clears up an entire at least 5-minute spiel. I wanted to show you that this is something that the board is going to be hopefully working on, and our profession is going to be working on. When our law passed in '05, the environment was quite different back then than it is now, and there is an entire list of exempted practices. If you were to look in our law, there are a lot of people that can practice bodywork services in our profession that are not licensed, and this is very an extensive list, but it'll give you the idea of a huge loophole that we do have that we will be working on. Here's some more. Whoops, excuse me. That we will be working with. This will also help possibly close a gap and identify people if they are human trafficked and they are turned and they do get licensed, because I'm sure that some do. That at least we will have identifying measures on those people. There are three facilities, and I know that it can't be an exhaustive list, that I know that human trafficking does get involved in, because being on the board, I do see this. Spas that may not advertise massage, and tanning salons, and nail salons. But I believe that these don't include massage therapy or body work, but they also are fronts for the human trafficking, is what I have come to learn. I think that with that correction, I believe that that is really all I have. Now that he has made that correction, I believe that that is made me happy. So.
Any questions for Ms. Johnson?
Good job. So.
I see none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Call Terry Barton, American Massage Therapy Association of Georgia.
Thank you, Representative Lindsay, for making that correction. We deeply appreciate that. My name is Terry Barton. I'm a licensed massage therapist here in the state of Georgia. I'm also president of the Georgia chapter of the American Massage Therapist Association, and we are supported by our national office with a letter in which we sent to Representative Lindsay. Representing the massage therapy community, I live in Cave Spring, Georgia, and I work in Rome as a licensed massage therapist for practicing for the past 9 years. I'm here today to applaud the intention of the House Bill 141 to fight human trafficking and to attempt to dilute the criminal elements associated with this diversity of our state. However, this element of crime cannot be attached only to one licensed health profession at this issue. It is much larger, and if you're going to do that, it needs to have it attached to all healthcare providers. And we just want you to look at that as well, okay? Not just to have it with us, but if you're going to have one healthcare provider, then it should have all healthcare providers.
Any questions for Ms. Barton? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'll call Emily Laney, the organization known as Not For Sale Georgia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Thank you, Representative Lindsay. I am part of Not For Sale Georgia. Not For Sale National is an abolitionist anti-human trafficking organization. I'm the co-director for the state of Georgia. For the last 8 months, I have helped our chapter campaign, initiate a campaign to put up this human trafficking hotline, like Representative Lindsay mentioned, around the metro Atlanta area. What I have, I'll go ahead and pass these out. I have an impact report of the 500, just kind of an overview of 500 places that we have put our poster, which is right here. It's in 7 languages. It lists the human trafficking hotline that is on the bill, and also just gives information about where someone can go to for help. The reason I'm here today is what our groups have found. We are an all-volunteer-led chapter, and all volunteers have been the ones that have been putting out the posters. We actually have a group going out on February 23rd to the, more likely in the Marietta area. But what we have found is that most businesses we have approached have been very supportive of posting this number. So we estimate about 80 to 90% of the businesses that we have approached have said yes, whether that be an employee break room, the bathroom stalls, or even the front window or the front, just the counter. Most businesses have been very supportive. Most that have said no have done so as a result of corporate restraints. So like McDonald's or Chick-fil-A would have to talk to their corporate headquarters before they could post anything. But the large majority have said, absolutely, please post this. We've also had opportunity to educate business owners. Some of them had seen things that they thought were very suspicious and weren't sure where to go and what to do, and others had no idea that this was an issue. I want to read a couple of testimonies that I received from some of the group members who posted these posters out around the city, just to kind of show you a little bit of the impact that we saw over the last 8 months. One place we went to was a Denny's restaurant. After telling the manager why we were there, the first thing he said was, "I wish you had been here last week." He believes he and a waitress saw a young woman who had recently moved here from the Midwest, believing she would have a job here in Georgia. But when she arrived, there was no job, and now a man was on his way to pick her up, where she would potentially enter some form of human trafficking. At the restaurant, she was crying and did not want to go, but before the manager was able to call the authorities or another resource, seeing no other option, she went with the man anyhow. This manager had no idea about the human trafficking hotline and gladly took a poster and put it at their front counter in case something like that happened again. Another testimony from one of our groups. We met a woman at a gas station. As we were putting up a poster in a restroom, she asked us what we were doing, and once we explained, she said that described her. We asked her if she wanted to call the hotline, but she said that the guy she was with had taken her phone. One of our team members offered the use of his phone for her to call, but she said she was not ready yet to go, though she did take the phone number. They ripped the phone number off and handed it to her. And they said, we only can pray that she will be brave and call it soon. These are businesses that aren't on the list for the bill, but many of the businesses and many of the establishments that are on the bill are areas we have approached and we're told no. Rest areas, truck stops, or bus and rail stations. We will continue our efforts in restaurants and in gas stations regardless, and because we've really seen a lot of opportunity to educate. We did have one hotel manager who told us that and it was a Howard Johnson hotel, so it was not, it was a nice establishment. He told us he had seen things that he found very suspicious and wasn't sure what to do. And so as a result, our team has followed up with him several times and are really encouraging him that when he sees suspicious activity to not be afraid to call the police or the hotline. So we've really seen an impact, and we believe that our organization, along with many of the partner organizations that are working in human trafficking, really believe that this is a number, the phone number is important, and it can really, really help our state attack this issue. So thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Laney? Mr. Setzler.
I just had some questions about nationally, this hotline getting set up, what states are doing this, what the call volume is, and just a little background information. I'd really appreciate that.
Absolutely. I do know that Texas has instituted this and receives a lot of calls. Stephanie Davis actually that's her paper. Do you mind?
Not at all. There are 12 states in the United States that have a similar bill. We've modeled it on those, and as you can see from the briefing paper that I've asked to be sent around, some of those states are Texas, Alabama was actually the model for this bill, and they've been very successful. I was in touch with the Polaris Project this morning, actually, to tell them that we were hopeful that this committee would pass out the bill this afternoon, and they said they are ready for Georgia to come on board.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm not looking to commoditize this and say, well, this much volume, and not that we want to drive volume. I don't have a sense of the order of magnitude of what we're seeing here. Do you have a sense of the numbers by state or the numbers nationally for 12 states?
They have received over 60,000 calls to date. I think you have that information. 1,200 of them from Georgia, without any publicity or the good work that volunteer organizations have done. So we have a feeling that once we actually mandate the posting of this number, it will be a tremendous source of rescue.
It's been up and running for how long?
7 years.
7 years. Okay. But we are posting in 12 states right now. Is that right?
That's correct.
So I'm just trying to kind of do the math in my own mind, Mr. Chairman.
It will spike for sure as soon as these signs go up.
And I may have some further questions about the process and how they take calls and what's done with that with respect to law enforcement.
This would be the time, actually.
Okay. Could you walk us through the process if a call is made to the National Support Center, how that would play out in terms of contacting local law enforcement?
I definitely can. I don't work. Not for Sale does not facilitate this hotline, but the Polaris Project does, and the hotline is in over 170 languages, and it operates 24/7. My understanding is when someone calls the hotline, if linguistic services are needed, they connect them. But then if they find out the location and the issue, and if they need to connect to law enforcement or for example, the Georgia Care Connection for a case of minor commercial sexual exploitation, they are able to connect them instantly. Believe it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding. The Polaris Project is an incredible organization. They're definitely experts in this field and have been operating very successfully for many years.
Mr. Strickland.
You know if other states have similar criminal enforcement provisions like this bill has? Okay, thank you.
I didn't get the answer to that. What was that?
Other states having similar criminal enforcement provisions.
And I didn't hear the response.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
It is definitely in line with other states.
Mr. Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, Mr. Strickland, did you have a follow-up?
I do not.
Okay.
First of all, thank you so much for all the work you're doing. I know, especially Representative Lindsay has been a champion of anti-human trafficking, and starting with HB 200, the short time I've been serving here, I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of that. A quick question about the calls. What percentage of those calls are from the victims themselves versus someone else kind of calling in?
I am not aware of that statistic. Ms. Davis, do you know? I've seen it before, of course.
Sure.
Please.
I think it's around 20.
If you'd like to come forward, that might be,
Yes.
ma'am, if you'd like to come forward, that might be more useful. Thank you. Take your time. If you could sit up to the right of Ms. Laney. So another microphone there, and be comfortable. Let us know who you are and who you represent.
My name is Stephanie Davis, and I'm the director of Georgia Women for a Change. We brought this idea to Representative Lindsay a few months ago, and we're very excited at the prospect of having it available to citizens in Georgia. And non-citizens, frankly. Foreign nationals will be able to take advantage of it as well, those women and children who are being trafficked in the massage parlors and spas around the state.
Did you say 25% are from?
Something like that nationally, I believe, are from the victims themselves.
Okay.
More often it's from it acts as a tip line.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be from another girl or a parent who's concerned that her daughter is missing and has been missing and does not have a good feeling about it. We know that people call from the airport who see something that they don't think looks.
Right. The reason I ask is for kind of trying to improve that kind of response. In my past life, I used to, I personally haven't handled those cases, but I had colleagues who did, and what they find is the victims, it takes a very long time for them to actually report or reach out. And I'm thinking maybe in the poster context, if there's some way that they could leave a message or something for someone who operates that, gathering evidence, identifying where they are is the issue. Because I imagine when they're being trafficked, you will have a very brief stop at a rest stop or a restaurant or something like that. Then they might be housed in a place where they have no access to telephone or anything like that. Exactly. So I'm looking. The reason I ask that is so that when we improve upon the law, think of other ways. Maybe like a little block box or something. We could drop a note if they see the sign.
That's a great idea.
So, okay, thank you.
I see no further questions. Thank you very much, both of you, for your work. I see no one else signed up to speak. I think what we'll do to the author is take a look at some of that tightening up language on the owner-operator, and maybe take an informal pulse on the penalty provision, with the goal, the hard target of since we're out Monday. I'm not sure I can gather a quorum for Monday. It could be an uprising, so can't have that. So I'm thinking Wednesday.
The committee has worked very hard on this issue over the years, and I think that us sort of sitting down and taking stock of the questions that were raised and tweaking the language, I think would be extremely appropriate, and we'll be ready to move the bill forward.
Yeah, we'll do it Wednesday. Mr. Setzler, did you have something?
Good, Mr. Chairman, briefly.
Sure.
Yeah, in the spirit of being who we are as a non-civil judiciary committee, I did want to ask a question that may be of some use. I presume this is standard language on the sign if you or someone else is being forced to engage in an activity. You know, if I were looking at this and sitting down with law enforcement and creating language, I don't know that. I mean, you talk about a vulnerable population. You probably have a high percentage of high school dropouts, or if they're from another country. I don't know that this wording, to me, is the clearest way that someone in a restroom. I wouldn't use this language. This seems. I don't want to say it's highbrow, but this doesn't seem as clear as it could be, to be crystal clear. You know, if you or somebody if someone's forcing you to do something against your will, sex, housework, you know, call this number. You know, I just share that to the author. I don't know if it's something that's standard, but that occurred to me as perhaps being able to be simplified. And I just asked the question about restaurants as well. I just
the language is somewhat standard. I would like to keep it as close to this as possible for the reason I think Representative Pack mentioned that a lot of these victims are moved from state to state, and they may very well be a situation where they'll see this sign 4, 5, 6, 7 times before they ever make the first call. So we can standardize the language around the country. I think that would be beneficial in terms of getting them to finally go, okay, I've had enough. I can now make that call. So be happy to sort of listen to any thoughts you have, but I am inclined to sort of try to stay with standard language that's being used in other parts of the country. So when they see that sign, they go, oh yeah, okay, I've seen it. Okay, this time I'm making the call. So that's my only thought on that. But I hear you.
And one last question to the chairman. As I unpack this, you tend to think about a mobile population is and this is somewhat new to me, is a restaurant near an interstate a more high payoff target to do this than a hotel that's, you know, in a far-flung area. I don't know that by not including restaurants. I mean, I think of a fast food establishment. We heard about some restaurants at Denny's or something. I mean, is there we states tend to copy ourselves. There's a tendency to want to copy what other states are doing. But we also recognize there's best practices that are able to be developed in emerging areas like this. That is there a way that by location we could define this so that you're really targeting what the need is? I don't know that human trafficking only happens along interstates, but you do think about certain communities more transient than others.
Yeah. Regrettably, I would say that it's not just along interstates. I think if we try to limit it to just areas near an interstate, we're going to lose a lot of folks.
And I'm not suggesting we limit it. I just was asking you broaden it in certain areas, and you know.
Yeah. I hear you.
I just share it with you parenthetically.
Sure. It would be good to know. I mean, I take notice of the fact that, you know, we do copy other states, and, you know, sometimes around here we live by, you know, what's working and what's not in other states. If we've seen what are really best practices that, you know, may have been thought of as an overreach at some point, but have been implemented and the sky hasn't fallen, okay, and there can be some places where, you know, maybe it was not an overreach but an underreach, and they could have done more.
Sure. Right.
So it's getting that example and not making anyone else's errors. So to the extent that we have that empirically, which I don't know if it even exists, we might do well to take a look at it.
We'll take a look, and I think, but I do appreciate the comments from the committee, and once again, I appreciate the fact that y'all have been the tip of the spear over the last 3 years on this issue, and I appreciate the committee's efforts.
Okay, we'll work on it between now and next Wednesday. Just remind that the members of the committee that Friday morning at 9:30 will be the hearing on the adult portion of the governor's criminal justice reform piece for this session, and we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.